What's going on out there? Welcome everybody to another episode of Explain of Thrones, the podcast where we go deep on George R.R. Martin's masterwork, and we're going through the show and explaining what's going on in the books, or what is not going on in the books anymore, as the show has gone way past it. For this particular episode, we'll be discussing episode 7.3, QueensJustice, which aired last night, but you're probably listening to this another time, so it was July 30th. With me, I have multiple wonderful guests. First off, we have my wife, Melissa Riley.
Hello, hello.
Melissa Riley Harris. Then we have her cousin, Robin Cabana.
Hi.
And my good friend, Dinez Yegan.
I'm back.
She's back. You might remember her from the first episode, and Robin
back
from the third
again.
episode. So, yeah. Wow. Big episode, huh, guys?
It was pretty epic. Yeah.
I mean...
That's exactly, it's like, where do you start? I've had so many conversations about it today where people start talking about one thing, and they're like, oh, yeah, and that other thing, and then, oh, my God, you know, what was that, and who said what, and it was crazy. It was crazy.
They seriously slammed together so many different things. Me and Melissa were talking on the way to work this morning, and it was just like, what do we talk about? There's so many things.
I know, I was like, okay, we can't talk too much because I'm going to save it for the podcast, but, I mean, maybe we could just, like, go through the order of the episode.
At the beginning.
Yeah, just for a log.
Well, we can start by saying we're not going to talk about Arya. I mean, I think that's easier than what we are going to talk about, so there you go.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about Arya.
I know, that's what I said at the end of the episode. I was like, oh, no Arya.
But yeah, so the episode began, for those of you who listened to the previous episode, I was talking about how, I just heard Jupiterion. I was talking last episode about how cool it would be if they did like an old school Game of Thrones thing where Jon and Dany don't actually get to meet.
Yeah, well, because I was like, what do you predict will happen? He's like, well, I hope Jon and Dany don't meet. And then as soon as like the scene starts, I'm like, well,
that's
told you that.
I mean, I thought that wouldn't happen until the end of the episode, that they would be the penny, but nope, they got it right out of the way.
Right, immediately. First thing that happens is he lands on the beach.
Yeah. And I thought it was a really, a great scene in a lot of ways. Just the different introduction of characters, the reunion of Jon and Tyrion.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah. But it definitely, and this is a theme I'm going to come back to a lot in this episode, but especially towards the end of the episode, where it basically flat out said, okay, it takes no time to travel around Westeros anymore.
Oh, yeah. I know, we talked a lot about this in the last episode.
The magical time travel across the world. But, I mean, like, it's a TV show. It makes sense. Like, they can't spend all the time, like, showing you them getting from here to there. Like, with the books, it's different because...
I mean, maybe all of Westeros is the size of Montana. We don't have any size reference.
I actually commented on someone's Facebook post about it. Like, maybe Westeros is... Maybe the map on Dragonstone is actual size.
Oh, there you go.
And they just march right across to it.
Yeah, but the thing we were talking about, though, like a big difference between the show and the books is that so much of the travel in the books is character building. Like you're learning about the characters as they're traveling from place to place. Especially, I think we had mentioned with Jaime.
Yeah.
When he's traveling from place to place and his progression in the books and how it's differing from what the show is showing right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, in the fourth book, after Jaime leaves Cersei, after Tywin is dead and, like, Tyrion has fled, didn't mean for that to rhyme, and Cersei basically sends him out to get all the remaining forces of the Starks and everything under control. Because, like, the Red Wedding has happened, so they've basically defeated them. Roose Bolton has defected the north to them. And so once Jaime leaves King's Landing, he's basically just wandering around the Riverlands, going and, like, mediating disputes and, like, giving out lands and titles, but also taking them from people. It's really incredibly interesting because you get to see Jaime make this huge character progression. But in the show, we're not really getting that with Jaime.
Yeah, we can get to that later when we get to the Jaime Cersei scene.
Yeah.
But being somebody who didn't read the books, like, I think we have seen a huge shift in Jaime.
We have, but it comes much further along.
In the books.
Right.
You know, and in the books, he's actually, like, he's stopped liking Cersei even.
Right, but I think they're hinting at that. Like, when Cersei came in the room and he said no, obviously, I have, and this is obviously jumping ahead, but I feel like they're building it because I think Jaime's going to kill Cersei after all of it.
Ah, very interesting.
That's cool.
After, like, everybody tries to kill her, she's going to go into, like, hiding or something and be in some kind of place, and then he's going to be the one that kills her.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a little callback to the second episode of this podcast where I made a correction, I forget what it was. I think it was a correction, a clarification, and an addition. That's what it was. And the addition was, we had kind of the talk about the Maggie the Frog prophecy and everything. I completely forgot that they left out of the show the biggest part of the Maggie the Frog prophecy, which is that she tells her, you know, the things about the golden crowns and shrouds and all that. And then she says, and once everything has been taken from you, the Valonqar will strangle the life out of you. And Valonqar is Valyrian for little brother. So Cersei assumes that means Tyrion. And that's why she, like, hates him so much, because she's convinced he's going to try and kill her at some point. But it's revealed in the books that Jaime was born second. So he's technically a little brother, too.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty big thing. That I'm really surprised they left that out. Like, I had completely forgotten that they did leave it out. It's such a big element.
Maybe they'll put it back in, or I don't know.
Maybe they'll show us the flashback again.
Do you think they're writing around it because that's not what they wanted to happen?
Yeah, I think so. I think they knew that they weren't going to have the, like, Jaime shift, you know, because they did that scene at the beginning of season 5, and that's, like, when Jaime goes to Dorne and does all that, and I think they had kind of realized, like, we're not going to have Jaime's story be similar at all.
Well, I do agree with you, Dinez, that it did seem like in that scene, you know, where he is kind of pushing her off at first, like saying no, that you do see a bit of that shift. But then the end scene with him and Lady Olenna, you know, when he's kind of standing up for Cersei, saying like, oh, well, when she's like, oh, you know that Cersei's a monster, and he says, well, maybe to you and to other people, but once we're safe, like essentially just justifying her actions, saying that she's doing it to protect herself and him and their, you know, the death of their children and whatnot. That
true, but he's come to kill her.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
But no, what you're saying is that, and then like Olenna's like, well, what makes you think that you're exempt from Cersei's wrath, essentially?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It was a little, to me, I'm still not. I feel like it could go either way. That he could either totally be still into Cersei, and which would be different from what I'm expecting to have him feeling for her in the books. And then be screwed over by her, or it would be really cool if he ends up having to step up and realize that she is a monster and kills her or something along those lines. We don't know yet.
Yeah. We'll see where
Right,
it goes.
but I think they were also, like, in him saying no to her, they were furthering that, I think his like, storyline that way, and, like, trying to at least slow down things with Cersei, plus Cersei being, like, open and letting people see it, and him being annoyed by that.
Yeah.
Their relationship. And then also at the end, he was like, sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. There was one other thing, and I'm trying to remember what the third thing was. You can edit all this out.
No, it's okay. Trains of thought are difficult sometimes. Well, I was just gonna add that I feel like book readers have kind of like known for a long time now that Cersei, or that Jaime turns away from Cersei, and have been noticing things that might lead to it. But it's been going on for multiple seasons, and never once has anything really come of it. So I don't know if it's a lot of building, or if they're just, the writers still aren't sure what they're doing with that. Because, like for example, when, at the end of last season, when she blows up the Sept, and he comes back, and that look on his face looked like a good hint towards that.
Yeah.
But then it really hasn't been addressed that much. And there have been other points, like when when he was down in Dorne with Bronn, you kind of wondered, like, is he going to have some sort of experience or witness something that's going to turn him away from Cersei? But no, not really.
I also feel like the fact that Lady Olenna, like, admits that whole I killed Joffrey thing to him, the way that I felt at the end of that scene was, to him, that only confirms, yeah, Cersei was right. Like, people, like, it's just us against the world.
Yeah.
We should be against everyone else.
Like, that's going to drive them closer together rather than further apart.
But I don't know.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think there's a case to be made on either side. I think they kind of are playing it coyly on purpose, you know? To keep book readers probably on the edge of their seats. Book readers thought it was coming, but...
Right. Yeah. So, anyways, back to the first scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the whole Jaime character has been a very difficult one to watch, where it's much easier in the books to follow along with what's going on with him. Like they even remember a couple of seasons ago when they're in the Sept after Joffrey dies, and they essentially had him rape Cersei.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, it is an ambiguous scene in the books, but she consents in the books, at least. Like, that, it's still what I would call a major issue with his character arc, but at least it's not like in the show where it's just like, wait, what? Why'd he do that? But, okay. That's enough about Jaime. Let's actually go back to the beginning of the episode, which, John shows up, and man, everyone's talking about how awesome Davos was.
Yeah.
With that line.
This is Jon Snow.
He's the king in the north.
They just seem like they were total frauds,
Yeah, I think.
And Tyrion on the other side is like a master with words, and then you have Davos is just
Davos is awesome though.
But every now and then John would just kind of look at it and what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they both are just so out of their element.
Yeah.
Which
it's
is
really
pretty
interesting.
great though, because it's like Davos essentially. It's something someone pointed out once on Reddit actually, and that didn't occur to me when reading the books. Davos is the only point of view character that isn't highborn.
Yeah, he's the Onion Knight, right?
Yeah, he was raised up, but like everyone else is highborn.
Yeah, he even mentioned that yesterday. He's like, I'm from Flea Bottom or something.
Yeah,
you know, but,
he said, you can
know,
probably hear my Flea Bottom accent.
Yeah, he couldn't even read.
Mm-hmm, exactly. But that was pretty awesome. And did you catch him talking to Missandei? He's been to the island of Nath.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Like, as a smuggler and sailor, he's had all sorts of adventures we don't know about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was cool. And then, so they get... Oh, well, before they get to the throne room and they have their big meeting, one of my favorite scenes, and yours too, right? The scene with Melisandre and Varys.
Oh, was that the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was like... We were talking about that a little bit. I was just saying I could totally imagine Varys, like, in drag, giving Melisandre, like... The way he was, like, the looks he was giving her, like, I'm just, like, picturing him being, like, this salty drag queen, like...
just the cattiest.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious. Bitch, what did you say?
Yeah. Which is pretty great, because it ties back to Varys' whole hatred of magic and sorcerers and all that. But she claims she's going to return to die on this continent. So
yeah, and Stannis was going to be the king.
Right.
Yeah.
She's a bullshit artist. But yeah, that is one of the things in the books, though, is she actually does see things in her flames, but in her point of view chapter, she reveals that, like, she can't interpret. Well, she's interpreting them, but she has no idea what they actually mean.
Yeah.
Like, she is seeing legitimate prophecies or whatever it may be in her flames, but...
She doesn't really know what they mean. She just kind of, like... It would be if you or I had a dream and we're like, well, I think that means this or whatever. Like, that's as much as she does.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so I guess...
Different ponies.
I guess we'll end up seeing her in, like, the series finale again.
Yeah.
Fighting a White Walker with some sort of fire magic. But that was cool. So then they finally do enter the throne room, and both characters don't know a thing about the other person. Like, as soon as they walk in, and they went over this a little bit in the behind the episode, how Jon basically assumes that she's just some rich girl from the other continent who's probably had everything given to her, and she probably assumes, like, here's this bastard who claims he's the king in the north and is essentially usurping what should be my throne. So everybody, I think, was hoping that, like, they would get along, and thankfully they do not, which is totally real.
Yeah. No, I really like that they didn't, like, hit it off or just become instant allies.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of back and forth and disagreement, and then Jon finally found his footing. It took them a while, but
yeah, it
finally
did.
stood up to her. But then they, Tyrion helped them work it out. And I liked that interaction a lot. I thought that was really cool.
The one thing that bothers me about that is that, like, the point that we were making about how everybody can magically get around Westeros.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes things happen and, like, everybody knows, like, a tweet was sent out. Like, immediately everybody knows the news. You know? And then other times, like, they don't know anything.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of the frustrating things about the show is, like...
Arya's not on Twitter.
No.
That's why she didn't know. She
And
didn't know her brother's king.
and that's...
She's on a social media cleanse.
Well, and That's kind of one of the things that I had thought of earlier. Like, Melisandre told her to send for Jon Snow, but didn't tell her anything about, like, why to send for Jon Snow. Like, her whole thing has been to fight the White Walkers. She got Stannis to leave the battles for King's Landing and for Westeros to go to the Wall and fight them up there. But then she didn't tell Daenerys that there really are White Walkers. Like, I don't know. It felt like quite a big oversight on her part.
True. I didn't even think about that. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And also, Varys, is like the master of whispers. He seems to know everything, but he hasn't gotten word. Because, like, the Wildlings and the Night's Watch, that's a huge deal. They all know about the White Walkers and the Whites. Like, I feel like at least Varys should know. He's got his little birds everywhere.
They don't get good reception up at the Wall.
Exactly.
Yeah, they've flown south.
Yeah, they freeze.
Yeah. And I mean, it's actually a important element of the books is, like, when information does travel, is it believed by people? Like, I don't even know if they did this in the show, but remember the very first time we witness one of the Whites when it attacks Jon and the Lord Commander in the first season? In the very first season, when Jon gets to the Wall and he's, like, the steward to Lord Commander Mormont, and remember, Ghost wakes him up, and then all of a sudden, this zombie comes charging at him?
Yep.
So, in the books, they send the guy who hated Jon, Alliser Thorne, down to King's Landing with that White's arm, like his severed arm, so that they can be like, look, it's real, all right? We know that, like, here's the dead are rising. This is a serious thing. But when he gets there, it's during what would be the second season, when Tyrion was the Hand of the King, and Tyrion hated that dude from his time at the Wall. So he purposely puts off meeting Alliser Thorne. And so by the time he actually does meet him, the arm has completely rotted and is just bones, which proves nothing. So it's kind of like Tyrion unknowingly kept super important information from the kingdom that could be very important.
Right, out of spite, which is something he does.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, I loved, just jumping out of order a little bit,
No, go for it.
Daenerys' line of, we all love what we're good at, when Jon says he likes to talk.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really great line.
Yeah, it really was. There were some great Tyrion moments in this episode.
I loved it when he was like, a wise man once said whatever, and then she's like, you don't have to just quote yourself.
And he was like,
he's like, I wouldn't do that to
you.
But he totally was.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, I didn't actually do any, like, researching. I wonder if that was said to him by someone earlier.
I thought we did say that it was someone else who had said it to him. I forget who. I have to remember what the exact line was, but I think it was someone else who had said it to him.
It was don't believe things just because you want to believe them. But I feel like that actually was said to him. But yeah, then he said, I wouldn't do that to you. It was like, nice save, because you totally would do that to other people.
Didn't he repeat a line, give me 10 good men and I'll impregnate the bitch?
Yeah, which was said by Bronn. So that did happen multiple times. Yeah, some great Tyrion moments in this one.
Well, you did kind of make, when we were talking earlier in the day, the point about Tyrion and the differences between him in the show and him in the book, that he's just a much more developed character in the book, where, like, right now in the show, he just seems kind of, like, very one-sided, like, very just always on and witty, and
He's the good guy. He's
Yeah.
the smartest person in the entire planet.
Like the underdog, everyone roots for Tyrion. But in the book, he's a lot more complex. He does have like a dark side to him.
He seriously does. He does some supremely fucked up things. Like, man, where to begin? Cooking a singer into a stew and feeding it to people. He does that. And actually, that they referenced that in the first episode. Remember the song Ed Sheeran was singing? Hands of Gold are very cold. It was the greatest part of the season so far. He's saying hands of gold are very cold, but a woman's hands are warm. It's because when Tyrion secretly had Shay in King's Landing, this singer knew about it and was basically taunting Tyrion, like, I know about the whore you have. And so Tyrion tells Bronn to kill the man and put him into stew and call it Singer's Stew. So he does some crazy things. He's also, like, his whole journey in the 5th book is just, like, littered with, dude, what are you doing? Like, in the show, they showed how he was getting drunk a lot during it. But in the books, he's not only getting drunk, but, like, doing some really messed up things. Because he basically has lost the will to live at that point. And is just, like, trying to drink himself to death. Which, of course, like, leads to some very messed up things. Like, when he's at Illyrio's palace, and there's the serving girls, and he's being pretty creepy with them. But yeah, in the show, though, it definitely seems like Tyrion's your good guy. He's the cool-headed one in this whole situation, and he's going to be the sensible one to speak truth to everybody, which, you know, is fine.
In the show, they had mentioned the fact that he built the sewer systems in Casterly Rock, right?
Yeah, well, let's get to that. That's one of my favorite Tyrion character moments in the book. So it wasn't that he had built them. What happened was, and in the show they did it kind of similar. So basically, when the Lannisters come of age, when they turn like 15 or 16, as most highborns do, they get to go and see the world. And Tyrion, of course, is all about, like, learning and seeing things. That's the whole reason he goes to the Wall in the beginning of the series, is just to see it. Well, Tywin, because he was such a colossal prick to Tyrion, says, you're not going. You know, Jaime and Cersei are going, but you're staying at Casterly Rock. And to add insult to injury, he says, I'm leaving you in charge of the sewers and the cisterns of the entire rock. And when he gets back, though, Tyrion managed it better than anyone ever had. The sewers flowed better than they had ever flown before, and I don't think that's the right past tense of that.
Flown before.
Sewer flowage.
But the point being that, like, Tyrion's the type of person who, if you give him a task as a fuck you, he's going to say fuck you right back by doing it better than you possibly imagine. And,
right, totally.
And so,
but
yeah.
That's totally his character in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. That he just kind of, like, jabs the needle in. But before we get to Casterly Rock, which I really want to talk to... All right. I guess not.
I'm trying to think. Well, the one thing that bothered me, okay, is that Jon is standing there going, I don't have time to be here, right? The army of the dead is marching.
Yeah.
But yet he's asking to mine dragon glass, which to me sounds like a long process.
Yeah.
Like, mining, I don't think that's like an overnight, like, few hour kind of gig and then you leave.
It's really not. And, like, it seemed like they had, like, 30 people on that boat. Did he bring the miners from the north?
Right.
I mean, I guess since it's so easy to sail from Winterfell to Dragonstone, he was going to sail back, get some men, sail back to Dragonstone, do the mining, then sail back to the Wall to fight the White Walkers.
Everything's just in fast forward.
Montana.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very easy to do all that.
One other cool thing I thought was the dragons coming in, like right over John's head.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty awesome.
That was pretty cool. And you know, he's like, whoa. And Tyrion's just like, you get used to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, those dragons are pretty big these days.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Thinking that they could do some serious damage to the army of the dead.
So. Well, you know, it's like, you don't believe it? Just go get on your dragon and take a ride. You know?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that, like, because they showed us that they've been marching, apparently, that was one of the opposite of things taking too long. The Army of the Dead has been marching for how long now?
Yeah.
And they were at Hardhome. How long does it take to get to the Wall from Hardhome? Because that's relatively close on the map. And not only
it's
that...
hard to walk when your muscles are rotted, you know?
Or you don't have them, I guess. And
I mean, they don't need to stop to eat or sleep.
It took a long time for winter to come, too. So, you know,
yeah.
Talk about that. It took, 7 seasons for it to get here. So, you know.
The seasons are slow, but the ships are fast.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
yeah, in the time they've been impending, walking down from the north, like, every kingdom has fallen.
Yeah.
There's been wars everywhere.
Yeah, the wars that take a couple of hours, it seems.
Right.
Oh, man. But, so let's jump from that throne room to the next throne room. Euron delivering Yara, Ilaria, and Tyene to Cersei. Man, I have to say, though, even though it's easy to make fun of him and call him Euron of House Hot Topic, I pretty much love how villainous he is.
He was like, just him walking through, like, when he was riding through, parading them through the, like, he was so full of it. He was like Gaston.
Yeah. Absolutely. He loved it.
Great.
That's totally who he reminded me of. He's like, I'm so great. Look at them cheering a brave boy. This is so
Everybody
cool.
loves me.
No one drinks like
I feel
Euron.
Oh my gosh, we should remix the Gaston song
Totally
to
do
Euron.
that.
No one kills like Gaston.
Oh my gosh.
Euron.
Euron.
Oh, it really works. Euron, Gaston.
Yeah.
I feel like he's Joffrey with pizzazz and All Saints credit card.
Right.
He really is like that line when he was talking to Jamie about like, maybe you can give me some tips, and Jamie was like, what?
Yeah. He was like, oh,
That
fuck, man.
Like, this guy's so cocky.
Yeah.
Well,
oh man.
So, yeah, and they kind of, one of the things, Robin, we talked about last episode that whole theory got blown out of the water was we were kind of thinking maybe his whole, I want to marry the queen, the most beautiful woman in the world and all that, maybe he actually meant Dany and was planning on turning on Cersei.
Oh.
But I kind of think that that's out the window now with the way he was acting.
Well, I mean, you don't think that he could still first marry Cersei, then screw her over and try to get with Dany?
Oh my gosh.
It's possible. It is entirely
Totally
possible. Yeah.
It kind of makes Cersei Belle.
Yeah. and once again, that's a total book thing. Like, Euron's whole thing is he's sending his brother Victarion to go get Daenerys and bring her back to him so he can marry her. So that could be kind of cool if that's still being, the seeds are being planted of that. But I don't know. I kind of feel like they won't go for that. It just seemed with the way he was acting towards Cersei and everything, like, because he seemed very disappointed when she was like, sure, we'll marry after the war is over.
Yes.
Well,
but
it's hard to know
stop
if
me
that's
if I'm
authentic.
wrong, but didn't they say, wasn't there a scene where somebody said, like, I have the Greyjoy, Navy, and somebody was like, for now.
Right. Wasn't that Jamie and Olenna at the end of the episode?
Was that? I don't remember who said it, but I feel like it was just like a little seed of doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being sowed, perhaps. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, with all of these, with everyone scrambling to win the Game of Thrones, it's hard to, to know if, I don't think he's, like, in love with Cersei. I think he just wants to be the king,
Yeah.
Yep. I think that would be a great fight, Jamie and Euron. So that's brewing.
Yeah.
They're going to go at it at some point.
Oh, for sure.
That would be great.
But, I mean, that's kind of what makes the whole having to speed things up so much really frustrating, is, like, in the first few seasons, it was fun to kind of guess the strategies because it was so much more ambiguous what could be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just kind of like things happen. Like the seeds of the Red Wedding were planted way in the first book even. Like, all sorts of plots took time to unfold. Like, you saw Tywin writing letters, earlier before the Red Wedding happened. But, like, now, especially with what happened at the end of the episode, it's just kind of like, this has to happen now.
Well, I mean, because they don't have books to reference anymore.
They don't have books to reference, and they don't have time.
They don't have, and it's not that they don't have time. They could have had time. They could have had full seasons, but they didn't have money.
Right, exactly. Which I still don't get. Is this not like their highest grossing thing?
I think they don't want to risk losing viewer interest.
Right, if they drag it out.
That's fair. And it's also like, I mean, they have recorded some of the most expensive episodes in the history of television.
Right,
So
multiple times they broke their own record on that.
Yeah, what the remaining 10 have in store in terms of budget.
And I mean, in this episode alone, I mean, they had some pretty big. I mean, last week was a huge battle, and then this week too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure they're cramming it in because they have to. Can't afford it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
To be honest, after last week's Jorah skin removal, I didn't really want to see any more gore anyways.
Yeah, just that whole thing was like, oh, the cure for grayscale. You cut it off, put on lotion.
But, like, so now in this episode, he looks almost completely healed. It's like, okay, how much time has actually gone by? Because that can't heal like that overnight.
No, it was like his whole body.
It was like instant.
But then the Meister, like, acted, it seemed as if, like, he hadn't seen him. So it also doesn't seem plausible that he had been sitting there for weeks letting it heal without someone checking in on him. Because didn't the Meister say,
it seemed like it was the first time.
Yeah, you have one day, like, pretty much telling him to kill himself in a day.
No, he said you have 6 months before your mind goes.
No, I know, but, like, at the end of that, he told Jorah, doesn't he tell Jorah, you can stay the night?
Oh, you're right.
They were going to kick him out.
Holy crap, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so they're, like, that should have only been one night, but he's, like, completely healed.
Yeah, well, the grayscale has gone. Your skin isn't even that red. Yeah.
Hey, there were some splotches left.
Some what?
There were some splotches left. He was cosmetically not attractive. He's still paying the price.
Yeah, that's true. Someone was saying it very much showed how Old Town is basically Hogwarts, and how Slughorn is like, you could have destroyed the entire village. But you didn't, so 100 points to Gryffindor. Now off to detention, Potter.
That's pretty much how it went.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that was very, very Hogwartsy.
That is funny. I'm predicting that Sam is going to become like the quickest maester ever. Like he'll be a maester by the next episode. He'll have
promoted.
Yeah.
He'll have earned 40 chains.
But also, something that's kind of frustrating me about the Sam story is they seem to be showing that Sam doesn't like it there. Like, he should love it there. That should be his whole thing. And then, like, in this episode, when the Maester's like, now copy all these manuscripts, and he looks, like, pissed off about it, it's like, that would be Sam's favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
And,
well,
go ahead.
He was like, how did you do this? He's like, I read a thing, and then I did it.
Right.
I read a thing, and I followed the instructions.
Right. Yeah.
So,
to play devil's advocate, Mike.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Sam on any Tuesday would not be annoyed and would want to copy those books, but he came to the Citadel to fucking fight this war and to figure out how to kill White Walkers and help John. So I don't think he wants to, work his way up in the mailroom.
Yeah, and I definitely don't understand why they aren't showing him, like, in classes. Like, shouldn't that be why he's at the Citadel? Instead, he's just cleaning up after people. So there's a lot of complicated things, but copying manuscripts is one of Sam's favorite things, and that's actually in the books that John basically tells him, like, you need to stop. You keep copying manuscripts down at the Walls Library, and Sam's like, but you don't understand, like, some of these are thousands of years old, and the paper is decaying. We need this information. So Sam should like copying manuscripts because it should help with fighting the war, because hopefully he'll come across something, as he did in the restricted section. He came across the dragon glass.
Yeah. I mean, the secret magical cure is going to be in that pile. Like, right? Like,
yeah, out of how many books are supposed to be there, he will stumble across the right one.
Yeah, eventually.
One of them is going to be about how to kill all the White Walkers.
Yeah.
How instantly wipe them out.
Had this one tucked away.
Yeah. Which also, can we talk about how, like, Dragonglass is magically able to kill White Walkers, but it doesn't really have any effect on whites other than, your basic weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember Sam stabbed the White Walker with the Dragonglass blade, and that caused it to explode into a million icicles. But the whites are just reanimated corpses, so it shouldn't have that much effect on them.
Yeah, but if you kill the White Walkers, do the whites go with them?
Ah, that's a good thought.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because isn't it some sort of, like, telekinesis connection?
Yeah, some sort of way that they're able to control them and raise them from the dead and all that.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I did not think about that. But John did actually say we need the Dragonglass to fight the White Walkers and the whites. So I'm wondering if it's going to be like they get all this Dragonglass that they mine in a day, and then they go and they're firing on the armies of the dead, but it's not having any more effect than any other weapon.
Which is why they need the dragons.
Right, because fire does kill the whites.
Huh.
And that's why John and Danny have to join forces and become best bros and fight the evil.
Unless there's like a mystery Children of the Forest army hiding somewhere.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's so frustrating because, like, what the show has set up for that, it could be an interesting, like, theory and it could come to fruition, but I don't think they're going to do it, Like I
Do
think,
what?
like have it be some sort of. Well, they already did show us that the children actually made the White Walkers, and they made them to fight men.
Right.
But what I'm hoping is it becomes an aspect of like, we're not supposed to just kill the White Walkers because they're the evil army. We're supposed to like realize that they're also humans and that we need to live with them as well as like everything else. But I think the show is too simplistic for that. Whereas the books, I think that is what it's leading towards, because George Martin has been very clear that Game of Thrones is not Lord of the Rings. He's literally said, like, I love J.R.R. Tolkien, I take a lot from J.R.R. Tolkien, but the real world is not like that at all, and I wanted to have more of a real world aspect to it. In Tolkien, like, think about it, the orcs are basically birthed by evil magic to take over the world. There's a very clear good and evil. Whereas in Game of Thrones, well, what Martin even went on to say about that is like, can you imagine the actual practicality of the ending to Lord of the Rings? Did Aragorn go through and kill all the orc babies in their orc cribs? like that's genocide, essentially. And we're rooting for it because they're the clear evil. But the real world is not like that.
But how would you say that the White Walkers have any dimensionality?
Well, that's kind of what
They seem pure evil right now.
That's exactly what I'm saying, is that I think in the books we are going to find out that they're not pure evil, that they are humans that have had some sort of mutation to make them look the way they are, but that they're actually just as human. Whereas the show,
I hear you.
The show, I think you're absolutely right. That is what's going to happen. They're pure evil, and Jon and Dany need to join forces to fight them because they're the good guys and the White Walkers are the bad guys. See what I mean?
Totally.
So that's a long and complicated thing that I look forward to having an entire episode once the series is done, just talking about that. So let's talk about creepy Bran.
Oh, he was so creepy.
What was the deal with that?
Oh my gosh. That,
Like, at first I was like, oh, wow, cool, they brought Bran back.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, he was just so emo and just
Yeah, it's
No,
great.
But you have to consider, right, what Bran's been through.
Right.
And I think him being the three-eyed raven and, like, accepting that duty and, like, almost being killed and losing Hodor and everybody he knows dying. And then he comes back as, he's not even, like, a member of the Earth anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was
Like,
going to say.
the old three-eyed raven, like, lived alone in that tree.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you can't be the three-eyed raven and have earthly connections.
Right. No, and I was about to say pretty much exactly that. Like, he's basically like the kid who's done way too much acid at college and comes back. like to him though, it's true. His mind has been expanded to such a point that he no longer can identify with people. But still, the one thing you're going to say to your sister is, you looked really pretty on the night you got raped.
That was really weird.
Yeah, that was awkward.
And it's like, if his mind has been expanded to be super knowledgeable on all these things, I could understand it being that he can't communicate properly or he can't, like, identify with people. but that's the one thing he does say.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was looking for something to prove to her that he knows everything, like
Right.
something so deep and intimate that, like, how could he know that being gone for that long, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's what they were going for, but yeah, he could have chosen a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, not a ton good has happened to Sansa.
Yeah, that's true. But
Yeah.
that's probably one of the worst.
The last time they, left off, she was just wanting to be a wife. Remember? Like, she wanted to marry Joffrey. That was her
Right.
life goal.
No, that was her whole thing. Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that, though. That's kind of a good point. And another thing that I thought about, but then I remembered, once again, the show expands everything to a totally different level. Like, in the books, Bran and Bloodraven and the Children of the Forest, they're tapped into this weirwood net, so they can see out of the weirwoods, and they can also skin change, so like they can see out of ravens and wolves and things like that, but they can't see anything else. So what I was first thinking was, like, maybe Bran doesn't know that she was raped that night. Maybe, like, he was, because remember, they were married in the Godswood, where the tree is. So maybe Bran only saw the wedding ceremony. And, like, that would make a lot more sense. But in the show, they kind of showed that he can see everything. You know, like he's not limited to the weirwoods and the animals. So, again, it's kind of, it would be cool if that was an element of it, that he didn't actually know how horrific that situation was for her. But, I mean, it's clear that he did.
Now, I thought it was interesting that the conversation Bran and Sansa were having was almost the same conversation she had with Littlefinger.
Littlefinger, thank you, yes.
Like, I almost was like, wait a minute, was Bran, like, warging him and saying these things? Because, he went from having, like, one of the dumbest conversations the week before with Jon to having, like, this really interesting thing to say about knowing everything and being everything all at once and fighting all the battles and kind of just being aware. And to me, that was like, it's very much what Bran is.
Right.
And it happened like right after that. So I almost wondered if that was like a foreshadowing of him coming, or was he even like controlling Littlefinger and saying all this stuff? Like, it was just very odd. Or were they writing it and then they were like, no, let's have Bran say this later, but we forgot to cut it out of this part because it seemed really redundant.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that so we had two characters tell her the same thing in a matter of
Yeah, no, Robin, you were reading my mind there because I next wanted to talk about that, and me and you had talked last episode a little bit about how it seems like the writers haven't known what to do with Littlefinger for the last two seasons. And that, too, felt like the same thing. It's like, I guess it was partially supposed to, because again, it's like, how much credit do you give them? It doesn't seem like they have that much, like they're writing that far ahead, like George Martin is. Like he plants things books and books before that come to fruition. Whereas the show, it kind of feels like they're winging it. But yeah, it kind of felt like that was supposed to be old Littlefinger talking, and because remember his whole thing was that he is an agent of chaos and he utilizes chaos to better himself. And so it kind of, before Bran came out, I was thinking that it was supposed to be like him saying, this is how I manage the crazy life that I've been leading and all the schemes that I've been doing is I'm constantly thinking about every possible thing that could happen. But then you're right. Then Bran happened and basically mirrored the exact same conversation. And it was just weird because it's like Bran is supposed to be doing it as this like font of wisdom. And Littlefinger is supposed to be this like evil agent. And I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah. Well, and I guess they're setting Sansa up to kind of decide which path she's going to follow, you know.
Yeah.
Littlefinger or her brother, or, you know,
Or
she's gonna
Cersei.
try to. Yeah, it was interesting, I thought. So.
Yeah.
Or is it just that Bran knows everybody's gonna die, so he's like, fuck it. Just fight everybody. They all suck anyways.
It really was creepy. Like, his acting was just strange to me. I don't know. It just seemed so, like, blah. I don't know. And I guess that's how his character has to be, but it was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, when he first met the Three-Eyed Raven, like, the old Three-Eyed Raven was answering his questions like a normal person.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, he was speaking a little bit in metaphor by saying, like, you won't walk, but you will fly, and stuff like that, but it wasn't like he was out of touch with, like, how to talk to people.
Yeah, and that's
true. But he was also like 80 years old.
But
Sorry.
that's what I'm saying. Like if he's that much older and has been experiencing that much more for that much longer, wouldn't the old Three-Eyed Raven have been way more out of touch with how to talk to people?
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe there's an argument to both sides. Maybe it's that he could get used to being like in that crazy world and balance himself, or that he would get too lost.
And Bran's just kind of like fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm really curious as to how Bran is like going to use all the information that he has.
Yeah. I mean, he has a lot. He can be a great propellant for the
Seriously.
plot, you know?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And like he even said, like, where's Jon? I need to talk to him. So he immediately wants to tell Jon that he's a Targaryen.
But shouldn't he know where Jon is?
Oh, good point.
True.
Oh, snap! Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Bran is totally Miss Cleo.
Yeah, he's a bullshit artist too.
Warg me now.
Warg me now for your free reading. You want to be inside the wolf? Oh man.
I mean,
So yeah, I mean the Bran thing too, though. It's like I really wish that I could give the show a lot of credit, and I really wish it was that puzzle and that riddle that if you stare at it long enough, you can start to figure it out, like the books is. But I don't feel like there's enough logic anymore where there's anything to sort out, you know? It's just kind of like, we don't know.
Right, anything could be a red herring.
Right.
like, it seems like Arya would have been the next Stark to show up at Winterfell, but yeah, they made it Bran instead.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they totally... I mean, I think that's all trying to be like, ooh, twists, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a twist that isn't set up is not a good twist.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like what made The Sixth Sense, M. Night Shyamalan's best movie, was that you could then go back and watch it knowing that he's dead, spoiler alert, and see all the different times that it was telegraphed to you. You know?
Yeah.
But whereas the show is just kind of like, oh, a twist is when a character you didn't think would die dies.
Speaking of maybe a red herring, which I feel like I should have said when you were like, anybody else want to talk about Daenerys and Jon meeting at Dragonstone?
No, go
was
for
the
it.
whole dead thing.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The heart thing, and he stopped Davos, and he was like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, shut up, Davos.
Don't say that.
Don't tell them. Yeah.
Right, like, what is that about?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had both talked before about how it kind of seemed like he was like, I'm trying to get them to join me to fight the army of the dead. If they know that I'm dead.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Like they already don't believe this.
And you want me to fight other zombies.
Yeah, like, how do we know that this isn't a trap and you're with the zombies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
Yeah, and the whole thing with John's resurrection, it really felt, you know, like everything else, like really rushed. I was saying to you, Melissa, like, wouldn't it have been cool if he had been dead for like an entire season and then he comes back? Like,
no.
No, because everyone likes John.
That's what I said. I was like, he's too pretty. Everyone wants to see him.
He is good.
Oh man!
Wouldn't it be cool if the hottest male character was not on the show?
But what I mean, also John, for as much as he's the king in the north and like there is always in the limelight, doesn't like things to be about him. I feel like to him, it's like, no, we don't need to get into that. That's about me. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm here for a job, for a purpose, to get help, to do this for the people. Like, he doesn't want to make it about him.
Yeah.
Totally, I agree. I think it's out of his modesty.
Right. Yeah. I can't remember who it was, but someone was saying John is basically the bathroom symbol guy. Where it's like, he's just the perfect image of a person. And you can then project so much onto him, but like to do that they keep him very bland, very normal, like he doesn't really ever do anything wrong, and you almost like you don't sense any conflict within him.
Well, and he does things that are wrong that are clearly right, like the wildlings and stuff like that. Like, as human beings, well, at least, you know,
right, wrong
maybe
to
like you believe that everybody, you know, should be treated equal, and that's like an underlying thing, right? But in their world that is wrong. Like, he is being wrong and everybody looks at him like he's crazy. So there are like some bits of him being
but what I mean
rebellious,
is,
but overall the overarching.
But I mean, to the audience, he doesn't do anything.
Exactly.
Wrong.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like they've tried to build the tension, but it's so clearly right what he was doing that there was no tension.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas, of course, in the books, there is a lot more complexity to it, where it's like he has to sell certain people out in order to do the right thing, and that's what ultimately gets him killed. But another thing, mentioning stuff we should have mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the person who said you have the Greyjoy fleet for now, it was the Iron Banker. Remember the guy from Bravos?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it wasn't Jamie. That's what I was like. I don't think that was Jamie.
No, it was him.
Yeah, the Iron Bank.
Mm-hmm. Mycroft Holmes.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
And
he's also in something else where he's in a
he's
fat
in
suit.
Taboo.
Yeah.
The show with Tom Hardy. Yeah. But yeah.
Wow, I forgot that scene even happened. In such an action-packed show, that seems like such a weird bit.
Well, and what I was going to mention though is because that seemed like old Game of Thrones, where it was like setting things up ahead of time. Because we've basically forgotten about the Iron Bank plot. They only did it for like a few episodes, like multiple seasons ago. But remember, Stannis was funded by the Iron Bank.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the whole reason he was funded by the Iron Bank was because the Crown had defaulted on their loan. And then he comes back to Cersei, and he's basically just like, so you haven't paid us in years, but, you'll pay us in 2 weeks? Okay.
That was what was really funny, because when she's like, give me a fortnight, you're like, we're like, what? She's gonna get all that money in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks.
I was like, everything's on fast forward now. Like, they just, travel everywhere. She's gonna get all this money. But it did set up for the ending of them
Jorah's cured tomorrow. He has a bet in 2 weeks.
Well,
Exactly.
But
I mean, well-
it's set up for the ending where they are getting the money from Highgarden, so that was in
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
plan all along.
But
Yeah.
and
She has all that gold now, so
there's-
maybe she can pay it back. Yeah.
Yep.
there's so much to talk about the Iron Bank plot, because that's a huge aspect of like behind the scenes that I really wish that they had continued with it in the show, that it continued to be like a big element. Because remember, it was addressed in like the second or third episode of the show. When Ned first gets to King's Landing, they tell him the crown is in debt to the Iron Bank of 50 million gold dragons. And, you know, in the show, you don't really get a sense of how much money is worth. But in the book, they tell you, like Littlefinger brushes it off as, oh, it's Robert, because Robert keeps on doing these tourneys, and he's just eating a ton, and he's funding it all on debt. But then they tell you that the Hands tourney, the one that we see in the first season, is only going to end up costing them, like, I think tens of thousands of gold dragons. So how did they get 50 million into debt when one tourney costs tens of thousands? Was he doing one every single day?
Something like that.
And it plays even more into what we were saying. They don't know what to do with Littlefinger, because it's very clear Littlefinger is the reason they're in debt. He's the master of coin. He's the one who's in charge of everything. So he's been embezzling this money, clearly, but also possibly doing it so to sow the seeds of chaos and to lead to a war, you know?
True.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also part, to go back to what you were saying with Littlefinger, of how they're not necessarily doing a great job writing him in the show right now.
Right.
Is because...
he seems to just pop up behind walls.
And stare creepily at Sansa.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I'm still here.
Remember me? I think it's because he is such a complex character in
Right.
the book that without having that guideline, they just don't know what to do with him. Because I, honestly, like, I don't really know where his plot line's going in the book, but I do have the feeling that there's so much more going on behind the scenes that I just haven't picked up, or you know, whatever the case may be. So if you and I, or like people who have gone deep into this, don't know what's going on, what's going to happen to Littlefinger in the books, the people who are writing a show definitely don't.
No.
So they're just like,
There's no way.
they're just like, we'll just like have him, you know, say vague, creepy things every once in a while.
Exactly.
And, you know.
and not to mention, like, the one plot he has had was marrying Sansa off to Ramsay, which is still the dumbest idea in the world.
Yep.
And like, how is she even still around him after that?
Right.
You
How
know?
has she not had him killed
Like,
along with
I mean,
Ramsay?
I know she needed him to help with the veil and all that, but like...
Right. And it's like, she could, I'm sure, because Bronjon Royce seems to be a very sensible person, she could, because remember when she revealed to him that she was Sansa, how Bronjon was kind of like, oh my god, you're Sansa Stark. Like, he seems to have a little bit of affection for her. So couldn't she be like, so, listen, with all your Vale armies, we need to kill Littlefinger. Like, he's done this awful stuff. Yeah.
No,
are you kidding?
Brother, you know, and hey, John, I really, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The whole reason Arya got rerouted to Winterfell is to go kill Littlefinger.
Right.
That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
True.
it is. It's a
That'd be
little
cool.
obvious.
Really
Because
cool.
as we were saying, I think we said this in another episode, when they really don't know what to do with a character, that character is going to die soon.
Yeah.
As happened with Doran Martell.
The Sand Snakes.
The Sand Snakes in this season. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know what to do with them.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't talk about that scene, the prison scene.
Right.
True.
Cersei.
Oh, that was
Evil
like,
Cersei.
that was
I honestly, I couldn't help but be like, shouldn't have killed Marcella. This is your fault.
I know, that's how I kind of felt too. Like, that seemed more justified.
Yeah.
Like, she just did. I feel like she just killed Marcella for like funsies.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
seriously,
she didn't need to, just because she's a Lannister, but like, she didn't need to do that.
Yeah. In the last episode, Robin, I said that the sand snakes are the undercooked eggs. They're just running all over the place with character. Because, like, well, Melissa, your dad even, when we were first introduced to the sand snakes, he was like, so they're bad, right? Like, they didn't give us really much of an impression of what to think about the sand snakes from the get-go. And so it's been so difficult to identify with them. But meanwhile, they do seem to be kind of like fighting a just fight. And it's just, it's so poorly written. Like, everything they say and do is just really tough. And I was like both of you guys. I was like, yeah, honestly, I don't feel bad for you. You killed Marcella, who is innocent.
But I just want to say, I spotted the lip gloss on Cersei.
Oh,
yeah.
And I was like, pink is not Cersei's color.
No. I thought that too, but I was just like, oh, that's a weird makeup decision.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
Yeah.
And then that scene at the end where they were just like trying to grab each other, like they were chained.
Yeah.
Where they're, like, they're just out of reach of each other, yeah.
It was just, I was kind of like, ha ha, you know? It didn't feel bad. Like, I kind of laughed.
It did, yeah. It was kind of silly.
Yeah. And how many times did she spit at people? Like, speaking of not knowing what to do with them, she spit like 4 times.
Yeah.
She's actually part llama.
That's all she has left.
That's her move. Like the one girl has a whip, she spits.
Down in Dorne, we spit like camels.
They're actually Greeks.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Oh,
thought that was funny.
man.
She spit so many times.
But there's no way that storyline ends there, right? Like, the daughter's gonna die, and
Yeah,
the other
I
one's
mean,
gonna
the
get
daughter's
out
gonna
somehow.
die,
Like, it's not gonna end
Alaria's
there.
gonna still be alive, and maybe she'll kill Cersei. I don't know.
I feel like she's gonna get busted out by somebody.
Yeah. Because any character who you don't see die is definitely coming back in some way. And even characters you do see die come back.
Speaking of not actually seeing her die, what about the final scene?
Oh, man. Shall we open up that can of worms? Because this is the part that I've been dying to talk about the most.
Yes.
Like, the teleportation.
Oh.
It was one thing earlier, you know, we have talked about it in multiple episodes, but did you notice that when Grey Worm, after he realizes, you know, like he asks that guy where the rest of the army is, and he looks out over the sea, that Euron was there?
Yeah, it was his fleet.
So he had time to deliver them to King's Landing, have all that, and he's like minutes behind Grey Worm.
Sail all the way around.
Sailing
around the continent, the goddamn continent.
Well, he's on the Interceptor. Nothing can match the speed of the Interceptor.
Right. You're on Sparrow.
He's on the Black Pearl.
Yeah. Oh my God, that whole thing was just
I
like.
laughed at that though after our conversation that we had just had in the last podcast too. I was just like, what?
Yeah, like
He magically arrives there.
okay, this is what we're doing, and on top of that, Jaime had time after hooking up with Cersei to march all the way to Casterly Rock, which is also across the continent. And then, as we saw, the army was marching very slowly, very small steps.
Yeah. That's what we were laughing. We're like, they're like waddling. Like,
Their legs are tied together. And they somehow have time to go across the Casterly Rock and then down to Highgarden, which is way in the south. Like,
you know, I just think Tyrion is doing such a shitty job. Like he's narrating the scene, and you're like watching it all unfold, and you're like, wow, this is a badass. You know, like the whole thing was so cool, and then it was just such a fail.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, apparently Cersei and Jaime have like the best intel in the world, way better than Varys, to know exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's just, to me, like,
And like 6 heads of house.
Yeah.
You know, they had the most money, like the at Highgarden. They're like the richest people. You have Varys. You have the fleet. Like, you have all these really strong players. You have freaking dragons, but now that whole alliance is gone.
Literally just with the addition of Euron.
Right.
Like, Euron is single-handedly beating everybody.
Well, and Jaime had a big part, though, too, with Highgarden.
But Euron is the game changer. He's the wild card.
Well, I mean, Tyrion said, like, he anticipated that Cersei would want to protect Casterly Rock. With, like, he was expecting her to send most of her troops there. So, I mean, I guess I kind of get that. That makes sense. But
Man, well, a lot of things. Like, one of the things I just thought of was their whole thing about not attacking King's Landing right now, which was by far the best plan. You know, the one that Yara suggested. It's like, take it. Just take the capital, and you've won the war.
Right.
Their whole reasoning was that they didn't want to be an invading force, but they send the foreign soldiers to be an invading force at Casterly Rock, so they're still doing that. But also, like, the whole thing was that you won't have the support of the small folk. We've seen the small folk back Cersei after hating Cersei, and they back her once she blows up the Vatican with the Pope inside and the most beloved queen inside. Like, the small folk don't give a shit. Euron, they love Euron now. Like, they're gonna.
Well, they're the ones that voted to make Westeros great again.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
clearly,
someone said they just like seeing hangings or something.
Yeah, really, they just like severed heads. Severed heads.
They love severed heads.
They just like severed heads. That's it. Yeah.
So it's like
they don't care whose head it is. They just want to see severed heads. So.
Tyrion's brilliant reasoning was not so brilliant.
and it just sounded so good. It looked so good,
and then it all went to shit.
But doesn't it feel like we just keep getting dealt blows and blows and blows? Like, where we have nothing left. To your point, Mike, like, had they just taken the capital, they probably would have their entire army still.
Yeah.
Like, all of the heads of house would still be there.
Yeah. Someone said Dany is basically, she keeps rolling 2s in Risk.
Right, totally.
But another thing, though, I wanted to talk about with the Casterly Rock scene, man. So, Robin, you read the books, right?
Yeah.
But Dinesh, you didn't.
Nope.
I have not been more disappointed in their depiction of something than I have been in Casterly Rock. The fact that it was basically an all-white, like, medieval times facade, that is so not what Casterly Rock is. Casterly Rock is built into the mountain. It's a castle that is entirely built of, like, caverns and tunnels within a giant mountain that is supposed to resemble a lion. Like, it basically has, like, what looks like forepaws out in front that act as the port of Casterly Rock, and it's supposed to have this, like, gold and red tinge to it, much like the Lannisters.
And that's why it's supposed to be impenetrable, too.
Right.
Built into this mountain, and...
Yeah, it's this huge mountain that's, like, entirely made up of caverns and rooms built into it, so you're not supposed to be able to take it easily.
Mm-hmm.
they could only afford using the stock castle.
Yeah. Maybe that was left over from another HBO show.
Maybe from Rome or something.
Yeah. And then to top it off,
Really
Highgarden did not look like Highgarden is supposed to look. Like, you picture the Reach is the most lush, fertile part of the entire continent, and so you picture these like Versailles, like these hedges and just gardens everywhere.
Yeah.
Like Dorne actually ended up looking. I thought Dorne looked more like a lush kind of paradise than
Yeah, because they were at the water gardens in Dorne. And yeah,
Highgarden looked like a cake. like
a grassy cake.
Cake castle.
And I was kind of like, because I don't even think they've shown it. I was like, what is this? And then I was like, oh, okay, they're marching on high. You know, like it didn't click at first. Either.
Right?
Like,
Yeah.
like,
what is
what
this?
Is this cake?
Perfect. Yeah. And weren't you saying earlier, like, it should have followed the colors of the house.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if they specifically mentioned that in the book, but that's just what I always assumed, like, the greens and golds
of House Tyrell.
Yeah, of House Tyrell. So.
Yeah, and, like, their sigil is a flower. Like, where were the flowers in Highgarden? So, yeah, there was, and just the whole scene was so fast. Everything was crazy rushed. But it did lead up to what I think was one of the best scenes of this season by far.
Yes.
With Jamie and Olenna.
Yeah, I mean, the actress who plays...
That was more satisfying than Joffrey's death, I think.
Yeah, totally. I was saying, though, the actress who plays Olenna was just... throughout the whole series, just on point. Like,
she's perfect.
So perfect for that role.
She's so good, and yeah, that's a big loss, I think, too, because she was really great.
Yeah.
But I'm glad she got, she just got to be so good.
Seriously.
So she was like, it was like, here's some poison, you little nice old lady. It's not going to hurt. And then she's like,
yeah. Even though Jamie is there to kill her, she still essentially wins the scene.
Yeah.
She totally won. I think she totally
She might dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did.
Totally. Exactly. Like, she was like...
Just chugging that wine.
It was brilliant. It was just... so good.
It really
And the look on Jamie's face, like, he doesn't make any big movements, but the subtlety of just his soul draining out of his face was
it is all
so well acted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and they've all blamed Tyrion all this time. Cersei has been obsessed with that. When we all know he had nothing to do with it anyway. But,
right. Which is also an interesting little book to show difference. When Jamie releases Tyrion, you know how in the show they hug it out and they're like, all right, bros, see you later. In the book, they have a huge fight. And Tyrion tells Jamie, I killed Joffrey, just to piss him off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, because the whole sequence of events is Jamie finally reveals to Tyrion that, this is a long topic, so maybe I'll try and hurry it up. Remember the whole thing with Tyrion's first wife, Tysha? How Tywin had him basically gang rape her?
Yeah.
In the books, Jamie reveals to Tyrion in that moment that, like, she wasn't actually a whore. I didn't set all that up. She really did love you. Father made me, put me up to it and all that. So this, like, blows Tyrion's whole world. And so that's why, and he also reveals to Jamie in that moment that Cersei's been fucking Lancel, the Kettle Blacks, and Moon Boy for all I know. And so then Jamie, throughout his story in the next book, keeps on hearing Tyrion say that over and over again. Fucking Lancel, the Kettle Blacks, and Moon Boy for all I know. And Moon Boy is like the court jester. And Tyrion keeps on hearing, his father, the thing that makes him shoot the crossbow, the actual line he delivers is Tyrion asks him, where did you send her? Where did you send Taisha? And after he's told him, like, don't say the word whore again, which was in the show, but it was about Shay, Tywin says, wherever whores go. And that's what makes him shoot him. So Tyrion keeps hearing wherever whores go over and over in his head. And, like, as he's on his little journey is like, I'm off to find wherever whores go. So it's kind of interesting that in the books, Jaime thinks Tyrion actually killed Joffrey. And in the show now, Jaime knows exactly who killed Joffrey. And he's one of the only ones. So I think we've talked the episode out. Did anyone have anything they were looking to plug or any shout-outs they wanted to give? Robin, I know.
Good.
Robin, I know you have a YouTube channel. I forgot to ask you about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have two channels. One's called Robin and Penny, and another one called Miss Robert's Nerd Life. So you guys should check them out. A lot of nerdy stuff, toys and vlogs and all that.
Sorry, what was the second one called? I didn't hear it.
Oh, my new one is called Miss Robin's Nerd Life. It's my vlog.
Miss Robin's Nerd Life?
Yes.
Great.
Super dorky.
But it would be perfect for our listeners, all 10 of them.
Listening to podcast. I've already mentioned this podcast like twice in my blog, too.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, cool.
Some cross-promotion.
Yeah. And I did set up a Gmail account for us, so if any of our dozens of listeners want to reach out and give feedback or something they want us to talk about, they can email us at explainofthrones@gmail.com. And I think that's it. So once again, the worst sign out in podcast history, from our throne to yours. This is Explain of Thrones.